Last week we had a guest speaker. It's been 2 weeks ago since we looked at this material. Lesson 3 from 2 weeks ago was forgiveness and treachery. The title of the lesson. And the last statement in that scripture, talking about Absalom, the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number. This week we jump over to chapter 18, but there's a lot that goes on in between. So I guess this week we're going to look at why it's not good to have all going hunting, right? Now he wasn't riding a horse. He was riding a mule this time. Now there were several times when Absalom took his horse and chariots and rode around the city, making himself look big to everybody. He did that for 40 years. I don't know why a mule instead of a horse in this case. Tim's not here, so I have to lean on your knowledge of horses and mules, Sonny.
Might have been what they had back then. That were used when Christ spoke, when we go get him an animal, they said about the mule. I'm assuming that's basically what they had.
Somebody told me the mules were smarter than horses. They're not as good looking. Maybe that's the lesson about Absalom too. He was really good looking, but on the wisdom side, he was lacking on that. Some of them.
A lot of that goes with mules able to, they can eat a lot stronger food than horses and do just fine. They're not as hard to take care of.
Not as expensive to take care of, okay? Fellow I worship with down in, you think of mules being slower, but fellow that had a neighbor with a mule that he'd take down and challenge other folks with horses to races, and he'd outrun them with a neighbor's mule.
A mule is supposed to be more sure-footed than a horse.
Right.
Because they use them mules in the
More sure-footed, okay.
Grand Canyon.
But that's not what the lesson's about, is it? Anyway. Back in chapter 15, the very next verse after the one we ended with the last lesson, a messenger came to David saying, the hearts of the men of Israel are now with Absalom. This is 15 verse 13. So David said to all the people of his house, we need to leave now. Make haste to depart, lest he overtakes us and brings disaster upon us, and strikes the city with the edge of the sword. So he's concerned about Jerusalem as well, not only by his own safety, the safety of his followers and his people, but also about the city. But he did leave 10 women, 10 of his concubines. What is a concubine?
Girlfriend.
Girlfriend, okay. A little more than that.
Well, it's a wife.
Female servant.
Servant, wife. Those two go together. They were protected.
They were legal.
Say it again?
They were legal.
They were legal. Right. Concubines were protected by law from Exodus 21 and Deuteronomy 21, so they could not be sold if they were no longer of interest to the man. And the rights of the concubines are guarded them from inhumane or callous treatment. So they were protected, and they were legitimate wives, but they were most often servants. And we got any other thoughts about that? A servant and wife goes together with a concubine. Okay, but he left 10 concubines there to take care of the house when he and everybody else left. He stood and watched as all his servants, everybody was faithful to him, passed by. Then there were 600 men who were referred to as Gittites who came by. 2 Samuel 15, verse 18. Followed him from Gath. Where do we hear the name Gath from the city of Gath before? Goliath was of Gath. He was a Philistine. So this is a Philistine city. Here are 600 men who have come to be with David. The king, and they were led by Ittai. The king said to Ittai, this is David, said to Ittai, why are you also going with us? Return and remain with the king. And he's referring to Absalom as king, as he's presented himself. You're a foreigner and also an exile from your own place. In fact, the text says you only came yesterday. I think that means just a short time ago. Why don't you go back to Jerusalem? You really don't have a part in this fight. We've just gotten here. But Ittai answers David and said, as the Lord lives and as my lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there your servant will be. But Ittai is pledging him and his men to David. As we go on down, there was also Zadok and all the Levites bearing the Ark of the Covenant of God that came out from Jerusalem. Zadok and Abiathar. And Abiathar went and watched as the children left, and then they were going to carry the Ark of the Covenant with David. But David says, carry the Ark back to Jerusalem, back to the city. David's thinking of God all this time, thinking of God, of how God deals with him in all humility. Carry the Ark of God back to the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back to Jerusalem and show me both it, the Ark, and his dwelling place, the temple. But this is God's choice, right? And so David also says, if God says thus, I have no delight in you, and here I am, let him do to me as it seems good to him. In other words, in all humility, he's responding to or looking for God's actions or how God will deal with it. Then to Zadok, one of the priests, he says, return to the city, you and your two sons, Ahimaaz and Jonathan. Part of the plan is you'll be able to tell me, if you're faithful to me, you'll be able to tell me what Absalom is planning. And through your sons, you can send word to me. And some of you would say Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. David said, Lord, I pray, turn the counsel, again, he's going to God, please turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. So God, please don't let the counsel of Ahithophel be heard by Absalom, or be taken by Absalom, because Ahithophel was known for giving very good advice. Then Hushai the Archite, coming to meet David with his robe torn and dust on his head. Now in 1 Chronicles, Ahithophel is listed as the king's counselor, and Hushai the Archite was the king's companion. Both were very important to David in his kingdom. But David says to Hushai, if you go with me, you'll become a burden. And I don't know if that meant that Hushai is older and David would be trying to protect him while he's also trying to protect and try to fight the battles that are coming. So he tells Hushai to go back to the city and tell Absalom that I'll serve you. And Hushai convinced Absalom to take him back in as a counselor by saying, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will now also be your servant. That you, David also is praying that the counsel of Hushai, who is David's friend, David's companion, and faithful to David, that his counsel will override the counsel of Ahithophel. Another little back thing, Ahithophel is the grandfather of Bathsheba. So is there some bad blood in there between Ahithophel and David? Don't know if that played in or not. And so the instructions to Hushai is, if you hear stuff, get the word to Zadok, to the priests. They can get it to their sons, and they can notify me of what's going on.
Erwin?
Yeah.
Did I stop you just a moment? I've lost my place with you. What chapter you got?
That's at the end of 2 Samuel, chapter 15.
What page?
All right, we're looking in between chapter 3 and chapter 4.
Okay. Where are you reading from now?
Bible.
Okay.
I'm catching this up between the end of the chapter of our book, chapter 3, which is chapter 15, and the beginning of lesson 4, which is 18.
2 Samuel 14?
2 Samuel 15, 16, and 17.
Okay, thank you.
Trying to make a summary of those.
Okay.
As we get into today's lesson, we'll start chapter 18. The next person that is recorded that David runs into is Ziba. Who is Ziba?
Is he a high priest?
Say that again?
Is he a high priest?
No. He was a servant of Saul that pointed out to David that when David asked, is there any of Saul's kin that are still alive? And Ziba said, yes, Jonathan's son Mephibosheth. And so he was given the duty by David to take care of Mephibosheth's claims his inheritance from Saul. That David told him that everything, all the lands that were Saul's, are now yours. And Ziba and his servants will take care of the land because Mephibosheth was crippled. But David had Mephibosheth, well, let's say, ate at the king's table every day. So Ziba comes with two saddle donkeys, loaves of bread, clusters of raisins, summer fruits, skins of wine. And David says, "What you going to do with these?" And he says, "Well, it's to refresh your troops, your people." And the king asks, "Where is your master's son?" And I'm not sure if he's talking about Mephibosheth or if he's talking about his son Micah, or anyway. Ziba says to the king, "He is staying in Jerusalem, for indeed he said, 'Today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom of my father Saul to me.'" Is there anything in God's plan that indicates he's going to return the kingdom to Saul's family? No. So Ziba is out. He has misled, as we'll read later, misled Mephibosheth in what he was doing. He took stuff out to David and his troops to gain a favor. And so when he says that Mephibosheth's family is looking for the kingdom to return to them, the king said, David said to Ziba, "Here's all that belongs to Mephibosheth. It's now yours." We find out in chapter 19, as we look ahead, that he finds out that this was a lie, and that Mephibosheth has been left not being taken care of, and it was not his intent at all to deal with that. The next event that we see is a man whose name was Shimei from the house of Saul come out cursing David as he passes by, cursing and throwing rocks and kicking dirt. And one of Abishai, one of David's generals, says, "Don't you just kill this guy?" But again, David is thinking of God, and this person is saying, "Now you're caught in your own evil," speaking to David, "because you are a bloodthirsty man." But David says, "No, don't hurt him. Let him alone and let him curse. The Lord has so ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction and that the Lord will repay me good for this cursing today." If he accepts this abuse that this man is throwing on him, maybe he forgives him, maybe God will forgive David. And we have Hushai letting Absalom know that he's going to serve him. And we have some of the counsel of Ahithophel to Absalom. First counsel that he gives him is to take David's concubines that he has left in the temple as his own. And he does it before all the people, so everybody sees it. He's nothing that's yours, David, can't be mine. That attitude. Any thoughts about that particular thing? Okay. The next thing that Ahithophel advises David is, "Now let me choose 12,000 men and go after David tonight, right now. Catch him while he's tired and hungry. His men will flee, and I can kill David and bring all the other people back to worship, to serve you." And all That saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. But Absalom does go to Hushai, who is David's servant, who is now in the temple with, or in the Jerusalem with Absalom. He calls him in and says, "What do you think about Ahithophel's advice?" And Hushai said to Absalom, "The advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time." And he gives reasons why. And he advises that if you'd be better off to let David get comfortable out there in the plains, and then build up an army and go out and kill everybody. And if any city tries to harbor him, tear down the city. And that scenario sounded better to Absalom and the elders of Israel. And so they delayed. Verse 14 of chapter 17. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, "The advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel, for the Lord hath purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel." So the Lord is in this. The Lord has purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. Hushai gets word to the priests. They send their sons to David, let him know what's going on. David gathers everybody, all his army out of the plains, across the Jordan, where they have better defenses. And as a side note, when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he went home, set his household in order, and hanged himself. And after David crossed over the Jordan, the people of that area that did continue to follow David brought him beds and raisins, earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour, grain, beans, lentils, parched seeds, honey, and curds, sheep, cheese. So David and his army was able to be refreshed. And then we get to our text for today. David's preparing for battle. Verse 1 of 18, and David numbered the people who were with him, said captains over thousands, captains over hundreds, sent out a third of the people, divided the army into three divisions. One under Joab, one under Joab's brother Abishai, and one under Ittai, that had come and pledged his support to him with the basically the Philistine group. And David was going to go out with them, but the people said no. They know, or Absalom's armies will know if they can kill you, the battle's over. So they'll all be out. So the focus would be only on finding David. So if they can keep the battle divided three ways, that he will be better, it'll be better served if he stays in the city that he's in. And the king commanded Joab, Abishai, and this is verse 5, and Ittai saying, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains that order. So Absalom is out to kill David. But David is still intent on protecting his son Absalom, even though all the evil that he's bringing against him. The battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel, meaning Absalom's troops, were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 took place that day. And the comment, the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured, sounds to me a great deal like God was involved in this battle in overthrowing Absalom's troops. Then we have Absalom. A young man came to Joab, and I saw Absalom hanging in a tree. And Joab said, "Why didn't you kill him? I would have given you a large reward if you had done that." But the servant, it just refers to him as man, said, I heard what the king said. And I wouldn't touch his son, which reminds me, of course, of David had the chance to kill King Saul a number of times, but he did not do it because his comment, "I will not king to kill the Lord's anointed." Joab took it on himself to kill Absalom. He took 3 spears in his hand, thrust them through Absalom's heart while he was still alive in the midst of the cherry tree. Absalom had run through the forest under, I don't know what terebinth tree is. That's not in our woods and stuff around here unless it's got a different name. But anyway, he had been noted as having a lot of hair. He cut it once a year, and the weight of hair was 5 pounds when he had it cut. That's probably a lot of hair, 5 pounds of hair, from that much in a year's time. But anyway, that hair got tangled in the tree. He couldn't get himself free from it. And Joab killed him. And instead of a royal burial or anything, they took Absalom's body, dumped it in a pit in the woods, and piled rocks on top of it, a large mound of rocks. Now, Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley, as a remembrance to himself. And he says, "I did it because I had no sons to follow me." It does say he had 3 sons and a daughter, but the assumption is because of the statement that those children had died. When we get to the questions on page 40 in the book, question 1, what did David do to attempt to organize his troops? He counted how many he had and divided them into 3, so he could divide the forces up evenly, and he had 3 forces to defend against Absalom's attack. The 3 leaders were Joab, Abishai, and Ittai. David's soldiers wanted him to stay in the city. He wouldn't. They could fight without having to try to defend him. What command did David give to his captains before they departed? Deal gently with Absalom. How did Absalom get stuck in the terebinth tree?
Riding his mule.
He was riding a mule. He came face to face with David's army, and he ran through the woods under this tree, and his hair got under the tree, and his mule kept going. Okay, discussion questions, back up a few minutes here. On page 39 in our book, the applications, although David didn't want to wage war against his son, he understood the necessity of the task. Consequently, he did what he could to prepare for the battle. And the author of the book comments, there are times in life when we must also do unpleasant things. For example, we may be forced to confront a sinful or harmful behavior in the life of a close relative or friend. Many other things may go on in our lives. Before doing so, we must take the necessary preparations. What might those preparations be if we've got to do something that's not easy? Prayer? Yes, prayer, absolutely. First thing.
Knowledge of the Bible.
Knowledge of the Bible. What does the Scripture say? That's what I'm doing to be opposed to God's will. The author lists our example. Living a godly life ourselves as an example to others, and making sure that our motives are indeed pure, that it's not a selfish reason as it was with Absalom. Thank you for your attention and your comments today. Next week, I will be looking at David's grief over his son.